everyone. This is Stephen Balch, your instructor for Legal Environment of Business at Ozarka College. Today what I'm going to do is give you a little bit of feedback on the chapters 8 through 10 activities that I finished grading this morning. And then I'm going to tell you what we've got coming up due for our chapters 11 through 13 activities early next week. So the first thing is, like I said, I did finish grading the chapters 8 through 10 activities this morning. Go in as soon as you can and look at your grades for those activities and read the grading comments that I left, and just let me know if you have any questions at all. Most of you did well on the assignment. I was very pleased overall. There were a couple of you that seemed to run out of time and didn't have time to finish, so I had to count some points off for that, obviously, but most of you are doing well on the assignment, so keep up the good work on that. The discussion that we had for chapters 8 through 10, if you remember, it dealt with the use or the silence in fraud cases, when silence can be considered fraud and when it is not considered fraud legally. And of course, we also looked at the ethical issues there as well. And I thought everyone provided some good information on that discussion. I was very pleased overall, so keep up the good work on the discussions. I really enjoyed reading everyone's comments and also enjoyed making my own comments on that. So hopefully you got something out of that. Hopefully you were able to kind of take away kind of a real world example of some of the things that we've been talking about in relation to contracts. All right. Let's see. Then on the chapters 8 through 10 objective test, most of you did well on that. I did notice most of you only took it one time. And I know I always remind you of this, but you can take those chapter tests as many times you want to up until the due date. And so, and your highest grade is recorded. So if you don't do well on the first attempt, go ahead and take it again. Like I said, your highest grade is recorded. So you really don't have anything to lose there as far as if you want to take it multiple times. So that's chapters 8 through 10. So if you have any questions about any of those activities that I finished grading this morning on chapters 8 through 10, just let me know. And like I said, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. And that brings us to what we've got coming up due for our next set of activities. So you'll notice right now on the activities page, we are on the beginning portion of week 5. It doesn't seem like we should already be on week 5 of the semester, but we are. It goes by pretty fast. So right now we're on the beginning part of week 5, and we don't have anything due this week, you'll notice, but there is work due early next week. So even though there's nothing due this week, you should still be working on the chapters 11 through 13 activities, which are due by Monday of next week, which is September 22nd. So you've got basically right at a week to be working on those chapters 11 through 13 activities. All right. And chapter 11, by the way, covers written contracts. So in the last several chapters, we've talked about contracts and the things that we need to have a valid contract, some of the things that make contracts invalid, and so forth. But in chapter 11, we're going to talk about written contracts and something called the statute of frauds, which are basically those things that have to be in writing, those particular types of contracts that must be in writing. And then you also have something in chapter 11 that you'll learn about called the parole evidence rule. Okay? And then in chapter 12, that's going to cover third parties to contracts. For example, sometimes for a contract, there's a third party beneficiary. And so there's law that covers that. Also, there's other topics that you'll learn about in chapter 12. For example, novation and assignment and delegation. Again, all those have to do with beneficiaries in contracts. And then you'll also, towards the end of chapter 12, learn about two specific types of contracts that deal with beneficiaries, which are joint and several contracts. And then in Chapter 13, we'll look at the termination of contracts. What are some things that can terminate a contract? Of course, the most common one is satisfactory performance, where both parties to the contract meet their obligations as outlined in the contract, and that terminates the contract. Once that is done, once the activities are completed that are stipulated in the contract, then the contract is done. It's terminated. But there are other things that can cause a contract to be terminated. It could be substantial performance. It could be discharge of a contract by law. And then also, in some cases, one or both parties may breach a contract, may do something outside of the contract. And there are some remedies for breach of contract that will be covered in Chapter 13, things that the non-breaching party can do to remedy the situation when one of the parties does breach the contract. Okay? All right. So that's chapters 11 through 13. So be working on those activities. Again, you have the assignment, test, and discussion all due by Monday of next week, September 22nd. Remember all the resources that you have, and make sure you're using all the resources. You have your textbook, you have your PowerPoint slides, you have the videos that I posted on the assignment page. So make sure you're using all those. I think most of you are, but I thought I would remind everyone of that. And so just be working on that. Let me know if you have questions. Enjoy the rest of your week and your weekend, and I will talk to you again sometime next week. Thank you.